Well, we have a real special guest with us today. We've got one of the newest instructors for the virtual Black Hills photo shootout with us today. We've got Tomás Alvarez. Tomás, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, we really appreciate it. And I need to comment that the picture behind you, it looks like you're sitting in our alley there in Rapid City, South Dakota.
Yep.
Which is a place, I know I've done a lot of photography. I understand you've done a lot of photography in that alley as well.
Yeah, we spend a lot of time in the Black Hills. At least for the last 10 years, we've been going out there for about a week or so. And the day I just stumbled into this alley one day and I was like, oh, this is amazing. And I ran back to my car and grabbed a camera. And ever since then, we've been kind of sneaking over there. But yeah, it's a fantastic place.
Yeah, I should mention that they actually encourage people to do graffiti. I guess they have to apply and get approval.
Oh, okay.
And then they can put the graffiti up there.
Yeah.
So it's very, very cool. But you're in...
I'm blocking the sign that...
Oh, yeah, no painting allowed on this.
That says no painting allowed, yeah.
And you're coming to us from Minneapolis, is that correct?
Yep, I'm just outside of the Twin Cities metro area in Minnesota.
Minnesota.
Yeah. Minnesota. I forget that I have an accent.
Well, we appreciate you coming in there, and you've got a fantastic website. We want everybody to kind of go out, and I'm going to put a link to your website here. Encourage everyone to go out there and check out your photography and sign up for your virtual classes or workshops, which will be coming up here last week of September, first week of October. Yep. So I'm going to turn it over to you and let you talk a little bit about yourself there. How about that?
Sure. I'm Tomás Alvarez. Again, I live just outside of the Twin Cities metro area. I split my time between photography and being a software engineer. I have those two passions. I don't know which one is more, but I am working my way towards photography. So I work where I work has kind of an early retirement program, and I've got 10 years before I qualify. So ultimately, I'm slowly building my way to kind of getting into doing photography full time. So that's the plan at this point. But yeah, I'm super excited. After Jay reached out about the Black Hills photo shootout, I'm super excited to be a part of it and work with it this way. And I'm hoping that next year we get a chance to all meet in person.
Oh, that would be great. Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be fantastic. I'm looking forward to it, but we'll make the best of what we can do right now.
Yeah, I really don't enjoy the prospect of doing these virtual workshops, but hey, it is what it is, and better that than nothing at all, right?
Right. And anytime you can connect with people, inspire people, or get people motivated to get out and shoot and then talk about it, it's still worth doing for sure. So.
And let's face it, virtualization of courses is not going away. It's on the rise.
Yeah.
Right.
Now, the times that we're in right now is really propelling it, but I don't think even after things get back to whatever it's supposed to get back to at this point, I won't say normal because who knows what the new normal will be. But because of that, I think we're going to still have a certain amount of that. And you even talked about in discussions earlier about how you felt that hybridization of course offerings was probably a good idea. So.
I think it's fantastic. I think it's more inclusive ultimately, right? Mm-hmm. Because there's sometimes that you've got a schedule conflict or there's a number of different things that can go on that still allow you to take part in some way, shape, or form.
Right.
Yep.
For years, my friend, a friend of mine, Robert, used to talk about the Black Hills photo shootout, and I always wanted to go, but it conflicted with a motorcycle trip that I would take out to the Black Hills. I'm like, well, which do I do? Mm-hmm. So, having some virtualization, having some recorded stuff, I mean, it kind of reaches a broader audience. It gives people a chance to see what really goes on and probably motivates people to kind of come out and try to be there in person at one point.
There you go.
I think it's all beneficial.
You didn't go to the Sturgis Roundup, did you?
No. We try to stay away from Bike Week. We just go down to...
Well, you said a motorcycle, and it was going to be in Sturgis this year, so...
Yeah, it's that. Yeah, that's fair. Sturgis can get pretty wild. There's a lot of people out there. But we would go out for the Roundup in Custer, which is usually the last weekend of September.
Right. In fact, I've done that. Done 2 workshops there at the Bison or Buffalo Roundup in Worcester State Park. Why don't you tell us, or tell our viewers, what workshops you have lined up for the virtual Black Hills this year?
Sure. I've got, I proposed a few of them to Jay. I've got one that's based on photo organization, kind of a step-by-step plan from camera to backup to, off-site backup within a budget, because it can be done. It just takes some technical stuff, and that's where I really kind of like that. Some Lightroom develop module stuff. There's some really cool tools within Lightroom to kind of help you get the full dynamic range out of images, push your images a little bit further. And there's a lot of things that I've talked to people about in the past that I realize not everybody knows about. So, and as Lightroom changes, it becomes easier and more powerful, but sometimes you really have to look for the things that you want to do.
Okay.
I'm looking at also doing a cropping workshop. I think cropping is one of the most impactful things you can kind of do to really isolate the image and bring out the story. So I think that there's a lot of tools, again, that Lightroom offers that I've talked to people and seen that there's a need to really understand what Lightroom offers in terms of that, besides just the rule of thirds. And then the other option that I'm hoping to have is participating in art crawls and kind of creating a product line with your photography. I'm on the board of the St. Paul Art Collective, and we're known for the St. Paul Art Crawl. And I've worked with people to kind of get them started in the process. Do you create greeting cards, prints? How do you put the prints together? Where do you get your supplies? And all those other things. So those are the big things that I'll be focusing on for this year.
Well, sounds fantastic.
I was going to jump in there.
Sure.
Do you consider yourself more of a generalist, or do you have somewhat of a specialty that you tend to gravitate towards in photography?
I'm probably more of a generalist, but if I prefer to sit on the beach and kind of just listen to the waves and absorb that moment and then try to capture that. So landscape is, my life at this point. I've tried shooting, doing family photography and wedding photography, and it's just not calming for me. It creates a little bit more stress. So I prefer to, photography is like my outlet. It's a de-stressor for me. So yeah, I'm more in line with landscape for sure.
Okay, cool.
Well, sounds great. And you have done in-person workshops and one-on-one. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, I've done some in-person stuff. I usually work with small groups because I really feel that I want to spend enough time with people and talk about things and, really get to know somebody to understand what they're looking for, rather than trying to give you a prescribed set of things. So I think in this case, it's a little bit different for me, but I do like the idea of testing both out. But yeah, I've done some workshops. I've done some small individual things. I'm working more towards mentoring as I kind of get deeper into photography and just spending one-on-one time to really kind of, give that vision. So I'm hoping that this experience is really going to help me make that a little bit more, make that a wider wedge, if you will, to make that a little bit easier to reach other people. And if I really can succeed at that, especially virtually, then I'll have a kind of a framework to work from. So that's ultimately what I'm building here, is a framework that kind of reaches a lot of people. So I'm trying to figure out ways that we can make these things a little bit more interactive and a little bit more engaging, so that we've all sat through presentations. So I'm really trying not to keep it that way. I'd like to keep people engaged, and so between now and the time that we have our workshops, I'm going to be focusing on what can I do while here to engage people in a meaningful way.
Right, exactly. Sounds good.
Yeah, and I also wanted to mention that, back up a little bit, that you had mentioned that you're currently a programmer. It's interesting because I was too. Fred was the technical guy at the...
Well, I taught IT for years.
Taught IT for years, and so many of our friends that are into photography were IT people, And it's interesting now because when I started out, cameras were primarily film, but now it's basically a computer that captures images.
Absolutely. I think it's fantastic. I don't go to a meetup or some sort of photo walk where there isn't, 3 other people that are in IT in some way, shape, or form.
Right.
And I love the connection between technology and photography,
right?
Especially in areas that are more experimental. Like I've been trying to get into 3D printing of photography of a camera. There's a woman in Europe who sells kits, and I've got a 3D printer. You can't see behind me, but to use old film backs and then 3D print the camera itself and then use the lens. I just think the possibilities are endless. I think it's so cool.
That's interesting. What kind of printer do you have?
I have one. It's made by a company in the U.S. I think they're in Tennessee. It's called Folgertech. And it's a. I can send you a link. I bought the biggest volume 3D printer I could because that's just how I think. But it's huge. It can print probably 1.5 by 1.5 by about 2 feet tall.
Wow. Yeah, mine. I have a Creality 5 Pro.
Okay.
And I think it's 13 or 14 inches the base.
Yeah.
And about the same height. It's a little bit smaller.
Right, but there's something there, right? There's something between.
Yeah, it's an interesting technology.
Yeah, the arts and creating something from your mind, and then being able to rapidly produce it, and then put it to use. It's I don't know. I think it's endless. I think it's phenomenal, and it just kind of makes me feel. It gives me a reason to get out of bed in the morning.
Well, I even 3D printed a teleprompter that we use for our podcast here.
Oh, that's fantastic!
It's a combination of 3D printing, some aluminum, and of course a mirror.
I think the possibilities are endless, and I'm so thankful that my kids have access to this stuff in schools so that they can think about it at a young age, and I wish I would have had that available to me when I was in middle school or something.
I'm going to say I'll never live long enough to do all the things that I want to do.
But that's okay. You can have a huge list and just keep checking it off. Now, I know you shoot digital, of course, nowadays. What do you think of the mirrorless versus the DSLR situation here?
Well, I switched to mirrorless, so I use Sony right now.
Okay.
I had a Nikon, but I liked my Nikon. I gave my Nikon to my son. He uses that exclusively, but I like the size. The size was a big factor. If you guys have been up to Harney Peak, out in the Black Elk Peak now, I threw my my D700 or 7100 into my backpack with a tripod and then went hiking up that, and I was like, oh no, this you only do that once. It's heavy. And then my Sony is so small, it's so lightweight and so powerful that I can't I don't see it anymore. I don't see the reason to carry a bigger camera. I didn't see the benefit. So for me, it was more about size than anything.
Yeah, well, Fred and I have said for a long time, especially when Sony bought Minolta, that Sony was going to be a major player. And I had hopes for the new R5 and R6 Canon, but in my opinion, I still think Sony has them beat.
Yeah. Sony still has the edge, I think, on mirrorless at this point.
Yeah. It's... Well, to be honest, so I'll be honest that I don't even own a Sony lens. I adapt Canon and Nikon lenses to my Sony. And so I can go pick up a used Nikon lens or a used Canon lens. I've got the 70-200 f4, the L lens. It's a phenomenal lens. And it's just one click to my Sony. It's beautiful. Cool. Right? It's all manual focus. Or actually, I do have an adapter, a Sigma adapter, that makes that one autofocus. But my Nikon lenses are all manual focus. So it forced me to slow down. I think it made me a better photographer having to do things that way, right? An older way, a slower way, a more thoughtful process.
Okay.
So I appreciate that, what that gave me.
I'll tell you a funny story. I had a one-on-one workshop with a professional wedding photographer from London. And he shot nothing but Sony mirrorless. In fact, I asked him, when you show up at a wedding, do people ask, when are you going to pull out your real camera? But he used Canon lenses. He had is it the Metabones adapter?
Yep.
And I have a large 500 f4 Canon lens. The thing's about this big around in the front.
Oh, yeah.
Well, we were out doing wildlife at a local park. So I loaned him that lens to use. And it looks so ridiculous with that little camera hanging onto that big lens. Yep. But I know what you mean. I've dragged that thing around for ages, and now I'm getting to the point where, I'm just getting too old to carry those big, heavy cameras anymore.
It's a little powerhouse.
Yeah.
It's just a little powerhouse. In fact, I've got an A7R2 as my main body, and I can't, it's 45 megapixels. It's got backlit illumination on the sensor. It's wonderful. The images that come out of there are fantastic. I can't even justify upgrading yet to even the newer Sonys because I'm like, I don't need all of that. This one does everything so well. I have no complaints about switching and moving away from that.
I'm not as impressed with the new Sony that it has come out. It looks like it's more of it was A7S. It looks like it's more
the A7S III.
Yeah, it looks like it's more for video people than it is for because I think what's 12 megapixel or something.
Yep.
So
yeah, it's 12 megapixel, and their real big thing is high ISO video,
right?
And how clear it is. So you can push that ISO so high and still get a good video image out of it. I think that's primarily who it's aimed at is these hybrid photographers who don't need you don't need everything that you can get out of an A7R4, but you really need video. So
and that's the problem Canon has with that new R5 is it does
overheats
8K and I understand both the R6 and 5 are overheating or having an issue. And they only be able to record for 20-30 minutes and then they overheat and shut down. So
right.
Well, I don't know. That's the world of technology moving forward because it's very competitive and everybody's jumping into mirrorless and they all want to make sure that you get their brand. But I think we all agree that Sony has done a good job of putting themselves in the forefront. And it's nice to see that you're giving us an interesting perspective on why you use mirrorless and what you use. And that's good because for other people who are enthusiasts in photography, they need to hear all these different things so they can make choices. Because the bottom line, it becomes down to what you're comfortable with. If you're still shooting with the DSLR and you're getting exactly what you want, there's no need to run out and buy a new thing.
Right.
And it's nice to see that you agree with that because it's not always what you're shooting with, but how you're using it. Are you getting the most out of it? It's like a box of tools. Are you getting the most or is it just laying in a toolbox? You know? So,
and I would say one of my friends. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, you go.
I was gonna say one of my friends shot with an older Canon, I think, and she would edit her images on her phone because she didn't have Lightroom or anything else. And some of the images that came out of there were fantastic. There was one of them that I was like, "Can I have a print? Can I have a print of that?" Because it was so cool. And ultimately, it's cameras are a tool.
Yes.
Right, and it's everything happens up here in your brain, and the image that you want to put out is what you think of or what you're creating with your camera. But the camera's just a tool. It's just a device to capture the beginning of that point. So
good.
And what I wanted to say is don't want people to misunderstand that I was putting video down because I'm a video guy. I shoot as much video as I shoot. Sometimes video is what you need rather than a still image.
Right.
And so I'm all for the video side. I just don't want to sacrifice the picture side or the still photography side for the video or vice versa.
Right. You have to get, well, like you said, it's a tool. You have to get the tool that works for you.
Right.
So,
and if you're going to tell a story, and if that story's in video or if that story's in the photograph, it doesn't matter. Just, use the tool that is right for you.
Absolutely.
I think that's exactly it.
Wise words from Tomás.
Well, do you have any other wise words that you would like to summarize? Anything that you would like to...
I usually don't have a lot of wise words. But most of the time, if I'm working with somebody new, it's always just go out and shoot for yourself. Make yourself happy first, and then worry about trying to make everybody else happy. Everybody's on social media, but if you're not happy with it, then what are you doing? So go out, make yourself happy, and then you'll make everybody else happy.
Yeah. Don't worry about all those likes and little hearts.
I think that was something that when we were discussing earlier said don't fall in love with the likes.
Yeah.
Yeah. No.
Words of wisdom.
Yeah. That's all I got, probably.
we're going to encourage everybody to go out there and sign up for your virtual workshops. In fact, there's going to be lots of great workshops, and I understand there's some great photographers this year. And hey, we really appreciate you taking the time from Art Alley, virtually Art Alley.
Thank you for having me. It's such a blast to talk to you guys.
And one other thing, I think we would love to have you come back maybe after the Black Hills
we can talk about some different things.
Talk about how everything went, and I'm sure we'll have more things to discuss.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Anytime. Trust me. Yeah, anytime
okay, cool.
I'll make that. This is great.
And we'll do that until we can actually have the physical hangout where we can go and pull up at your door and say, "Get in the car. We're going on a road trip."
Yeah,
I'm you know what? That wouldn't be the first. You guys wouldn't be the first to do that, and it wouldn't be my first time doing it. So.
And you got to come down here to Florida when this thing's all over too. Go. So we want to take you around.
Yes, sign me up. We'll figure that out.
Good.
Okay, there you go.
Okay, done. I put it right down here. Tomás, thanks again. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.